Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this video with me. This is Latal, your astrologer and your spiritual counselor. Today, we have a very special guest, Mr. Elliot Adam. How are you, Elliot?
Hello, Latau. It's so good to be with you. Thank you so much for inviting me along. I'm so excited to talk about the myths with you today.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure if everyone knows, Mr. Elliot Adam is actually the author of Fearless Tarot. Yes, it's an amazing tarot book, and also Tarot in Love. Yeah, personally, I've been such a big fan for Elliot. So would you like to tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yes, I'm Elliot Adam. I'm the author of Fearless Tarot and Tarot in Love. And I'm a tarot card reader who's been working really professionally since I was about 16 years old. So that was back in like 1800 or
Oh,
something like that. Yeah. And so I've been doing it a long time. But I just find that tarot is most useful for people when they're not afraid of it. And so my whole book, Fearless Tarot, is about taking the fear out of some of those frightening cards and really interpreting them as symbolism to empower yourself instead of
absolutely.
be frightened of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I sometimes, I do get inquiries as well from clients asking, should I do this? For example, is this against my religious beliefs? Is this,
Mm,
it's
mhm,
evil? Am I doing the right thing? If I come to you for a reading session, right? So I do feel that a lot of people have this misconception about what tarot
mhm.
is, right? And so
Yes.
that's the reason why I really I saw your book on Amazon. I was like, okay, I have to read this book. The title is exactly what people need. It's to be fearless. Yeah. And to really get to know tarot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. So, as I think all of you guys know, both Elliot and me are fans of Greek mythology. And this is also, the reason why I published this Oracle deck, Oracle of the Mythic Heroes, because I just loved the stories. And I do feel that, we are the myth and we are still, learning the same lessons as our ancestors, from thousands of years ago. And so I'm really curious about, Eliot's journey with Greek mythology and, how did it start?
Oh my God. Well, I'll tell you about me, and then I can't wait to hear about you because I'm also curious about how you discovered it. But the way I found Greek mythology is I grew up very poor. We had no money as children. And so I would go to the library and I would find myself going in the children's library to the mythology section. And there was a book. It took me 30 years to find this book again, but I found it.
Oh, wow.
And this is my first intro to Greek myth. um, it had these beautiful pictures
Oh,
of all the
wow.
gods and goddesses on it. And as a kid, I must have taken this book out like 20 times, and I would just read it voraciously. And I thought, these are such interesting stories. As a kid, I always used to draw owls
Yeah.
for some reason. And then I opened up the page, and then there was this goddess, and she had the owl on her shoulder, Athena.
Athena,
And I
yeah.
thought, who is Athena? Oh my goodness. So I just was just set afire by these mythologies because they reminded me of the fairy tales. They reminded me
Mm,
of the stories that I heard growing up. And they spoke to something really deep in me. And
right.
so I have been in love with the myths ever since I was a kid. They have given me such a great moral compass. And they've also given me so much to kind of delve into that's informed my work in tarot and
Mm,
symbolism as well. So
absolutely. Yeah.
that's how I got started with the myths. I've just adored them. What about you, Lithal?
Yeah, I think it's really like, it's almost like you met your soulmate, right, Elliot, right? You saw that book, and by the way, that looks like a heavy book. I mean, as a kid, if you
Yeah.
had carried it around, yeah,
I
that's a
love
lot
it.
of
Yes.
that was a lot of heavy work, yeah. For me, it was really different because I grew up in communist China, and we had no opportunity to study Western mythology. It was just not a part of the agenda, So
Sure.
the first time I actually encountered Greek mythology was when I was already in my 20s, and that was with my first astrology teacher when I lived in Australia. most astrology teacher, they will start their, class by, teaching you the traditional, the chart calculation, the planet and things like that. But my astrology teacher talked about Greek mythology. And that's how he
Mm,
started this whole thing. And so my understanding about each planet was not really about the traditional way. Yeah. Let's say the sun represents this, the moon is that. But I read
hmm
the myth. And from the myth, my teacher asked me, so from the story, what do you think the planet means to you? Right? So, for example, he would say things like, okay, so now you know Apollo stories, right? He's like this, he's like that. So, what do you think as a planet, it means on our chart? Right? How can you
mm,
associate the stories of Apollo, or sometimes Helios to our planet, the star sun, on our chart, etc.,
hmm
etc. And I remember that was really the fascinating part, the stories, and just so that's how I started, and I just never let that go.
Oh, I just love that. What a brilliant teacher of astrology, too, because it can be a rather abstract topic for a
Yeah,
beginner.
yeah,
It can be very formulaic, and sometimes you're thinking, oh my goodness, I have to remember what does the moon mean again? And what does that
yeah,
mean when it's in this house? And I don't know. But to make the astrology planets
yeah,
characters,
mm,
absolutely brilliant, because then they're people almost you're getting to know in your chart. They're living in you, in your head, in your
yeah.
spirit, and you can start to kind of dialogue with them on a deeper level. I think that's a wonderful teacher to teach astrology like that.
100%. He was very different. Yeah, very different guy.
Hmm
Yeah, and he also had this his own designed Greek mythology cards. It was, he didn't really publish them. It was just he was also, very good at graphic design things. And
Ah,
I was looking at his cards and I was thinking, it's almost like, I don't know why, maybe just me. It reminded me of because when I was a kid, I was very fascinated by video games, the
hmm
RPG video like Dragon Quest, that kind of stuff, right?
Me too. I love them. My
And
Legend of Zelda, all of that. I
yeah,
loved
that
it.
right. And I suddenly felt it was a similar to that. It was almost like the stories of the gods and goddesses and heroes and heroines are a little bit like an RPG game because they're just it's so complex. There's love, there's hate, there is family, and there's children, there's lovers. So everyone is there, and so that really piqued my interest, I think. And then after that, I just never stopped about so many books, right? But when I talk about this fascination with my parents, they don't really understand it. They think it's just they think mythology is for children. So, and at least,
Yes,
in China, in Chinese culture, right? China has mythology as well, but Chinese mythology is really for
definitely.
children, I guess. Yeah. The Monkey King, that kind of stuff, right? So,
Sure,
yeah,
sure.
yeah. So, who is your favorite Greek hero and also the heroine? Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's a great question. And I had to think about it because, when I got into mythology as a child, I was always into the gods, the
Mm,
goddesses. I was
mm,
into like those huge archetypes.
yeah.
And the heroes, I would kind of get into them a bit. And it wasn't till later when I was, reading the Iliad and the
Mm,
Odyssey,
mm.
then I was like, okay, this is fascinating. So, I mean, hands down, I mean, I like the O heroes. So I like Odysseus,
Oh,
number one. I
okay.
like Orestes, and
Orestes. Oh, wow.
I love him. I love the the myths with him, and then I also like Orpheus a lot too. But
Yeah, yeah,
Odysseus, I just love his craftiness. I love
yeah,
that
yeah.
Athena favors him because he's of the many ways, and he's just such a fascinating character. But also just the myth of
Mm,
him trying to get home
mm.
and going through all the trials and tribulations. It's so symbolic of our own hero journey where, we are moving sometimes past the island of the lotus eaters and we can stay there and enjoy the beautiful flowers and then zone out. Maybe the lotus is, drugs or alcohol or
Yeah,
procrastination or, whatever. And we can kind of get drawn into that.
yeah,
And, facing our greatest fears and the cyclops and all of that, all to get home, which for me is like a symbol of like coming back to self.
yeah.
I think it's just such a cool mix. So Odysseus for sure, because we have the Odyssey, and there's just such a great, I mean Homer. I mean, you can't. He's the first. It just doesn't get better than that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then
I
for
think,
heroines,
mm,
oh, go
mm.
ahead,
No,
please.
no, no, please, please go. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
heroines, those are a little more tricky because, ancient Greece, it was very patriarchal. There wasn't a lot of
true,
heroines. There wasn't a
true.
lot of
Yeah,
female figures who are, big and strong and that.
yeah,
The one that comes to mind is Atalanta,
yep,
who's,
yep. Mm,
the devotee of Artemis, the
mm,
goddess of the hunt. She's kind of, I think she's left and abandoned and then
yeah,
raised in nature and
yeah.
ends up, becoming kind of someone on the fringe of the society. So I kind of like her because she's kind of cast out by the society,
Mm.
which I can relate to in my life. And yet she kind of finds a way to be valuable, to come back into the society and then but to be in her own way and she tries so hard to keep her individuality. She tries
Yeah.
so hard to be the devotee of Artemis who's just off in the woods and untamed by man.
Mm.
And yet there's like the Greeks, they just didn't want that. They wanted her to get married. So they,
Yeah.
throw a few golden apples at her and
Yeah.
she has to,
Yeah. And
so then I'm kind of like, oh, Artemis, Atalanta, if you only would have just stayed with Artemis, but she's a cool hero for sure. And then Helen, I love Helen.
mm.
Not so much because she's a hero, but she's kind of semi-divine. And if
Mm.
you
Mm.
research Helen, if you go to Sparta,
Mm.
she's actually worshipped as like a goddess. She's actually this really, and her name Helen, it's like Hellenes, it's the Greek name. So
Yeah.
she's kind of like
Yeah.
the goddess of Greece in a way. So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, I could talk about the myths for 2 hours and bore you all to death. But who are your favorite mythological heroes?
My favorite hero is definitely Orpheus, and that was actually the first mythological story that I actually read after, I completed my astrology study, right? Not through my teacher, but just by myself. I'm still today, I'm fascinated by that story, and I'm so touched by what he did for Eurydice. But I guess, for people like, us, right, working in this profession, I guess we all have a little bit of Orpheus in us, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I see Orpheus really as a wounded healer, right? He
Mm-hmm.
played this beautiful music to heal people's soul, but at the end of the day, he lost his own wife and he couldn't save her from the underworld, right? So probably, he's playing, the music every day, but where does he find his console and where, who is going to heal
Mm-hmm.
him? And I really feel that, sometimes as a therapist or as a counselor, and that's our mission. We're trying to help people find their path, but sometimes we're also,
Mm-hmm.
fighting our own inner demon, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I personally I resonate with Orpheus the most. Yeah.
Oh,
And
I love Orpheus.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And for female heroines, of course, Atlanta is amazing, right? And I see her archetype in my clients a lot. So, with Oracle of the Mythic Heroes, I will use this deck in my sessions with my clients as well. And
Mhm.
I realize a lot of women would pull this card because
Interesting.
yeah, because they are, I don't know about the culture in Chicago much, right? But yeah, there she is. Yeah, perfectionism.
Yes, perfectionism. I
Yeah.
think that's so appropriate.
Right. But I realize there's because a lot of us, right? I guess, we all want to be Atlanta. We want to be excellent in what we do. But sometimes the purpose can be a little bit different, right? For Atlanta, I think a huge part of her, of course, she was admiring, Artemis and all that. But I think there was also a very strong part of her wanting the validation from her father. Her father abandoned her, and that's
Oh,
why
yes.
at the end she went back to her father and said, what am I going to do? And the father said, you marry a man because I want a son, right? And so she did, and she
Mhm.
compromised. And you can see how much validation she really needs. And this is just a very interesting streak of loneliness in her, I feel. And sometimes I see that
Mm.
in my clients a lot. Maybe they're
Mm.
working really hard, they're trying really hard, literally to win a parent's validation, but it's like a black hole. It's never validated,
Mhm.
that kind of
Mhm.
energy, right? So I see her appear a lot in the reading. And the other one is Penelope. I like a
Mm.
lot. Yeah. You talked about Odysseus, and that's the
Mhm.
wife, right? And she waited for Odysseus for that long, and she was so creative in her solutions to distract her suitors. And she also took the the role of the Queen of Ithaca, right? She ruled the country, and she was not just
Mm,
twiddling her thumbs and sitting there and thinking, "Where's my husband?" Right? And sometimes I don't really see Penelope as just patience. I see her as creativity,
mm,
and that
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, and so that's why in Oracle of the Mythic Heroes, I associated her with the Deccan, with the constellation sign Leo, because I feel that it's
Mm,
not just about her, waiting patiently, sitting there, but her creativity and also her faith in, her husband, coming back one day. So that's something that I really like and I really admire, actually. Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
well, she's a wonderful character from mythology for sure. She's also
yeah,
that mother of Telemachus, and
yeah,
she's, raising the future king, and she's trying to keep those awful suitors at bay and
yeah,
keep her dignity and keep her home and keep her husband's possessions together. And I think that is so interesting what you say about a lot of women that you meet with and the need for the approval from the family and the father. I never looked at Atalanta like that, but
mm,
absolutely, she
mm,
is rejected by the father, and she does go back, and she does end up forgiving him
yeah,
for leaving her.
mm,
So that's fascinating, and Orpheus. I mean, he's so brilliant because as a therapist, you're right, or even as a tarot card reader, you're going into the underworld. You're
mm,
going into
mm,
other people's underworld, and you are trying to bring back a part of them back to the
yeah,
light and
yeah,
let them heal that. And it's
100%.
such an
Yeah,
interesting story too. He's almost out of the underworld, and he does what all of us do.
mm,
We're all
mm,
set up for success.
mm,
We just have one more step to take, and we're over the finish line, and we're onto the. And then what do? We look back.
we look
We
back.
look over our shoulder,
Yeah,
and we say, "Oh, do I really want to do this? Maybe."
yeah,
And then we lose it.
we lose.
So
Yeah,
it's like, keep going. Don't stop and look back. Don't think about what's behind you.
yeah.
Stay focused on the goal. I just love that myth so much.
It's amazing, right? We learn so much from the myth and everything. And I wish more people would give themselves a chance to read Greek mythology.
Mm.
Yeah, it's not actually not very popular in Hong Kong. What about in Chicago? Do children read myth since a young age?
Yeah, in school we're taught, yeah, at least when I was a kid, and that was a
Mm,
long time ago, but we were
mm,
taught, one chapter in our history book would be about Greek mythology and the different gods and goddesses. And it wasn't a major curriculum, but if you go to university here, you can take mythology class.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
a big thing.
Mm,
I studied ancient Greek language in
mm, mm,
college and
mm.
learned all the old Homeric hymns and all of that
Ah,
sort of thing. And I love the language. I love the history there. So college, you can really get into classics a little bit
yeah.
more. But it's also on our television.
Mm,
Percy Jackson and the Olympians. There
yeah,
was a movie, but now there's a big show on Disney, and kids are getting introduced to mythology that way. Or
yeah,
the animated Hercules show from
yeah,
Disney, when
yeah.
I was a kid, that introduces people. So myths are just everywhere
Everywhere.
here,
Yeah.
but they're not things that general people on the street are like, oh, did you hear that myth about Hercules with blah blah blah? Nobody says that
So
here.
yeah,
They,
yeah,
it's kind of a niche. It's
yeah.
kind of something that really intellectual or kind of nerdy people kind of get into, and then you know
Yeah, I
the other
get it.
people
Yeah.
kind of just they kind of get into it. But I think that's why your deck is such a great service to where you live, because people will see this and they'll learn the myths. They'll start to interact with them, and then they'll make those connections with their deeper self and the
Yeah.
lessons that they have to teach. Because I think that's when the myths are the best, is when we're dialoguing with that deepest inner self.
100%. Yeah. Maybe I should make a Chinese version of that. I need to do a Chinese. I'm actually,
Sure.
I contacted a publisher in Taiwan, and hopefully they will be interested in do the foreign rights, right? In
Mm-hmm.
Chinese, and so that more people in China, in Taiwan, and Singapore, they will be able to have the access to this deck, yeah, if they prefer to read things in Chinese, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Things get translated all the time. I just heard my book was translated into Russian, and it
Oh,
was in
really?
Russia. Yeah, it was so weird. And the cover is different. It doesn't look anything like,
Oh, it's
how
different.
mine
Cover
looks,
is
but
different. Oh, okay. Mm.
cover's different, but they took basically the book and translated it into Russian, and I just think that's so cool. It's like, wow, I can't speak Russian, but
I see.
that's awesome that people can get something out of it there, you
Yeah,
know?
that's several extra million people, right? Yeah, that's
I
awesome.
hope
Yeah,
so, you know.
yeah, yeah. So, do you have any plans to visit Greece anytime this year?
Actually do. So I don't know if I told you this, but for the last 25 years,
Mm.
I've been working on an ancient Greek tarot deck. So I've
Okay.
been
Yep.
drawing it and
Yep.
redrawing it and going back and forth. And I've never, gotten it off like out, but I finished it about 8 times. And
Mm,
because I'm a perfectionist, I'll
mm.
say, oh, this art now at the 78th card doesn't match the art from the first card. So now I have to do the whole thing over again. I mean,
Again,
so I've been
yeah.
doing this hamster wheel. I've been running forever. Well, this year I was lucky enough, there's a patron that found me and she loved the deck and she
Mm,
said, you're getting this published this year. So she's investing in it
mm.
and she's sending me to Greece to write the accompanying book. So I'm going to
Right.
go to all the ancient temples. I'm going to be having people along with me on my YouTube channel, Elliot Oracle, where I'll be
Yeah,
in
yeah.
front of the temple of Artemis and I'll tell her myth and I'll kind of do a camera thing and a Q&A with people. And I just
Awesome.
love Greece. I've been there a couple times. I saw you were in Greece too on your Instagram, weren't you? Were those
Yeah.
pictures of you in Greece?
So I go to Greece every year. Yeah. So every
Oh,
usually, yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. So I was wondering do you know when you're gonna be there?
I'm not 100% certain
Sure.
yet. So I'm
Okay.
thinking October, but it's
Okay.
still up in the air
Of
because
year.
we might be
Okay.
moving this year. So there's
Yeah,
just all
yeah.
this stuff. And plus,
Yeah.
I have to finish the deck. So I'm on this really tight schedule
Like a
to
schedule.
try to
Yeah.
get all the artwork done by
Okay.
April.
Oh, I see, yeah. So I go to Greece every September, yeah. And one of the reasons is because I go to Delphi. I've been to Delphi so many times, but every time I go there to pray
I
and
love it there.
people think I'm psycho because I'm there. I'm praying, but when you go to Delphi, right, you see usually there's just tourists, carrying cameras from other European countries,
Yeah.
American tourists and whatever. You actually don't see a lot of Chinese people there. I guess it's just not very easy to fly to there, yeah. And so I'm literally there praying at the Temple of Apollo, and people think,
Mhm.
what is this guy doing? That's kind
I
of
love
funny, right?
that.
Yeah.
That is so awesome because that is my absolute favorite place on
Yeah.
the face of the planet is Delphi.
Yeah.
And it's because of Delphi I even wrote my book.
Mm, mm.
So, long story short, I was a classical oboist. I used to
Yep.
play in the symphony orchestra,
Right.
and I did a concert in Dublin at the
Mm,
Royal Academy of Music. I did a solo concert, and I just realized that I didn't love it as much. I was anxious, and I was just like, why am I trying to be perfect? Why
mm,
am I
mm,
trying to do this instrument all the time and trying to work on reeds all the time? Well, anyway, I did tack on a trip to Greece afterward.
mm,
And I, got away from doing tarot readings for about 10 years when I went to university. I went and got my doctoral degree in classical
mm,
oboe. And so I didn't really talk about my tarot work because
mm,
I was a little ashamed of it. I was like, oh, well, that's
mm.
not really respectable. I'd rather be a important musician in an
Yeah,
orchestra,
yeah, yeah.
So I went to Delphi and I was in line for the temple to see the ruins. And the lady who was selling tickets said to me, who are you?
Mm,
And what brings you to Delphi? And I said, well, I'm Elliot. And instead of saying I'm an oboist, I said, I'm actually a tarot card reader. And I
mm,
have my cards with me. Would you like a reading? And she
mm.
said, yes, yes. And so she pulled me over this broken column, and we sat
Uh.
down in front of the temple and I started to read her cards and she started to cry.
Oh, that's
And she
amazing.
said,
Yeah.
this is exactly what's going on. You have to meet my friend here. So
Uh,
then I met her friend and he owns a shop there. And
uh-huh.
then I was reading his cards and then I was reading his friend's friend. Well, anyway, that night they said, you need to meet our friend Apollonios. He plays the ancient Greek oboe.
Mm.
And I said, oh my God, that's so interesting. I play the oboe. They didn't know that.
Mm. Yeah,
And I said,
yeah.
I'll bring my oboe with me. So there we were in the moonlight in the Castalian spring, and I'm playing the oboe, and he's playing the ancient oboe. And it was just the most profound experience. I mean,
Wow.
so cool. Yeah. I mean,
What
Delphi, I
when was that? How many?
was in 2015. In
Oh,
fact, hold
wow.
on a second. I'm going to show you a picture of it. It's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
funny. Yeah. Here's me in that old Greek man.
Oh wow.
And
That's
I'm
so
playing the
cool.
modern oboe and he's
Yeah.
playing the ancient
The
oboe.
ancient oboe.
And
Wow.
the old man, he didn't speak any English. He only spoke Greek. And I don't speak modern Greek. I know ancient Greek
Yeah.
kind of, but not
Yeah.
modern.
Yeah.
But he held my hand and he said, "You've been gone for such a long time, but you're home now and you're
Mm,
ours." And
mm.
I'm just like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah, yeah.
And so I got home and I said, "Why am I not doing my tarot?
Yeah,
My
yeah.
job is to do readings. It's what I did as a kid. It's what I did. I opened a shop. Why
Mm,
am I trying to be a perfect musician?" So,
mm.
I just, I kind of faded out of the oboe and I started learning the harp, but then I wrote my book and then I made my online presence happen in 2017 and it just took off. But
Yeah.
it's because of Delphi. I mean, I know that's a long story, but Delphi is just, it's
It's
amazing. And I love that you pray there.
yeah,
That's so lovely.
it's awakening, right? I mean, Delphi, the energy is so interesting.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. You really feel it, right? And I don't know. I can never get tired of going to Delphi. I mean, I have a really good
Mm,
local friend, a Greek friend there. So every time I'm in Greece, at least I spend 2 weeks there, and then he will drive me
yeah.
to the places I want to see. But every year we go to Delphi. And
Oh,
I don't know what to say about that place, right? And also, we traveled quite a lot outside Athens, further north, right, to see Meteora, the monasteries,
wow.
yeah. And my favorite place is Peloponnese, yeah, sorry, yeah. So there's
Yes.
actually another temple of Apollo, called the Temple of Apollo Vase, in on the
Hmm.
west, yeah, part of
It's one of the
Peloponnese.
best preserved temples in
Yeah,
ancient Greece.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So we drove. My God, it was so difficult to drive to there. Yeah, but when I was there, I was in peace, and it was nothing there. Have you been to Vase, that place?
Not yet.
No.
I'm so
Yeah,
excited to go, but I've studied those temples and
yeah,
the floor is all kind of rocked and
yeah, yeah,
but the columns are all there and because it
yeah.
was so remote,
Mm,
it wasn't, devoured for building material, which is what
yeah.
happened to a lot of those temples.
Yeah, so it was very well preserved actually. The pillars,
Hmm.
everything was there. But it was, I think they were trying to really protect it, right? So it was completely covered. So you
Hmm.
can't really see it from outside, if you know what I
Mm,
mean. Yeah, you can't really get a good
yeah.
photo of that because it's completely covered by plastic, the sheets. But when you go
Yes.
inside, you can see the temple from inside, and it's very magical. Yeah. So that's a
I
really,
have to go there.
yeah, it's just a little bit difficult to get to it because the road is very rocky and it's twists and turns. I think the Greek government should spend more money on that. I think they should. Yeah,
Have you been to the Corinthian cave in Delphi? Have you been there yet?
Korean
It's
scene.
kind of
Mm,
it's kind of up a very winding road. It's a remote cave where the
mm,
first oracles used
mm.
to give their oracles before the Temple of Apollo, but it's
Oh,
way up on the top of Mount Parnassus. It's
uh-huh,
so cool.
uh-huh.
And you can often hire a taxi person in Delphi to drive you up there. But these roads are frightening. They are literally on the edge of the mountain, and you look down and
Oh,
it's just this precipitous drop. But that cave is so cool.
oh,
You
oh,
have to
wow.
see it. It's called the Corinthian Cave. Check it
Korean
out
cave.
next time you're in
Okay,
Delphi.
definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much for the info. Yeah. I've been to a really interesting cave in Greece, but it's not on the mainland. It was on an island called Samos.
Oh,
Samos Island.
Paris
Yeah.
Island.
Exactly. So I went to see Hera's temple there. Yeah. So, it was
Oh.
the
Isn't
ancient
there just
Greece.
like one little column left now or something like that? Or
Three.
three. Okay, well,
Three.
that's better than I
Yeah,
thought.
yeah, three. But the whole site, right? The archaeological site is huge, right? So it's definitely worth seeing. But the cave that I went to with Pythagoras cave.
Oh,
So yeah,
wow.
so the mathematician, astrologer, right? So
Yes.
I
Yeah.
remember I hired a driver and we drove for like 3 hours because it was in the mountains, right? And
Hmm.
finally we got there, and it was all the way up. You have to climb. The cars cannot go that high, right? So you climb for like
Yes.
30 minutes and you get there. It was just a cave there. But I don't know, sometimes maybe people like us were kind of crazy. When you stand there and you just feel that all can see what
Mhm.
how Pythagoras was teaching his students in this cave. It's kind of
Yes.
crazy thoughts. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Oh God,
Mm,
that's so cool. I haven't been to Samos yet either. I can't wait to go to all these places. And I
mm.
think you've just inspired me to go there as well. I
So
want to visit
yeah,
Argos. I want to go to Olympia. I want to go to all
Olympia.
these
Yeah,
other places.
yeah,
Yes, I've
yeah,
mostly been in Attica when I go to Greece.
yeah,
So
yeah.
this will be so exciting this
Mm.
next time.
This year, I'm planning to go to Volos, so Mount Pelion. Yeah, because I want to
Ah,
see. Yeah, they
yes.
have some amazing, beautiful beaches, of course. There's
Hmm.
also Centaur's Path, and you can also
Oh.
see the Cave of Chiron, which is just a cave, right? But
Mm.
again,
Yes.
there's definitely a reason why people call that the Chiron's Cave. So
Hmm.
yeah, so hopefully this year I'll get to see that. Yeah.
Well, I'm eager to follow along on your adventures on your Instagram and look at all your wonderful pictures. That'll be so exciting.
Absolutely. I'll upload them or I'll send, I'll update you, when I'm there. But hopefully, if you are in Greece around the same time, hopefully we can see each other in Athens. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Great.
Absolutely. I'd love
Yeah,
that.
great. So thank you so much, Elliot, for your time. Yeah. And thank you all our audience for supporting us and so far. And remember, Mr. Elliot Adam, Fearless Tarot and Tarot in Love. If you're interested in reading tarot cards and learning the secret of tarot, check out his books. All right, so
Oh,
wish you a wonderful year of dragon, Elliot, and I'll see you next time soon.
well, thank you, Latau. It's been an honor to be with you. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
See you next time. Bye.